We are live. So many interesting things happening. I was talking to one of my friends yesterday and I met him after a long time. It was really good to. It's really hard to find people around who are at the excited about the same things at the same level. And because I know this friend for a long time, it was pretty good to like we just had this gap in the conversation, and it was really good to just go back, have this conversation, and just kind of realize that there's so much alignment over here. We both are coming from different angles. He's more technical, I'm more non-technical. I'm more focused on growth product, he's more focused on tech, developers and tech stack. But we are interested about the same things, and we can talk about the same. And I think that's also the beauty, because we can talk about the same things but from different angles, so we both get to learn from each other. And there's something that he mentioned to me that I started using. Actually, he mentioned me to use WisprFlow. I started using WisprFlow, and then we had this partnership with WisprFlow. So this is again amazing. I then once tried it, and then I'm like, wait, this is pretty cool for the live streams, because as I'm reading something, as I'm finding something, and an idea pops in my mind, I can quickly open a new tab, and I can be like, hey, go run for me, go run this tweet for me, go run this prompt for me. And I think that is pretty cool. WisprFlow did a good job. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to find like people around you who are also interested in the craft and in building things, and they're also interested in talking about what's happening in the industry, taking insights from there, and putting that into your work. We were also talking about Poke has done a pretty good job. Poke or Poke by interaction can be described as OpenClaw, but for the non-technicals. So it's more in the sandbox version. There is, so we still don't know. There are a lot of security vulnerabilities with all the LLMs. There could be any issue. But I think it's better to be using these things than to not be using these things, because yeah, because you want to try, you want to play with them, you want to explore, you want to see what is possible, what are the things that could be done. Yes, there will be collateral damage in the process, and yes, we are new to all of this. We are new to this world, and right now billions of people are being onboarded on AI as we speak right now. But I think it's better to be using them than to be not using them, because by using them you are at least getting the redundant work out of your workflow. You are delegating the redundant work, and it is making you focus. It is making you really think about work. It is making you really think about the thing that you call work, and is the work even important, and is the meaning that you're putting to your work, is that even important? So yeah, it's better to be, even though there are security vulnerabilities. Yes, ChatGPT might be reading your voice, Anthropic might be collecting your data. They are already now planning to show ads. Ads are coming, obviously. But does that mean that you stop giving your data away? You stop using them? I don't think so. I don't think so. It's better to be using, it's still actually better to be using the top players than to be using any random downloaded app from the App Store. So yeah, if you are playing with Anthropic, Claude, if you're playing with ChatGPT, OpenAI, Grok, all these, the main top dogs, it's better. I think I also I heard something interesting about Gemini, which was actually very interesting. At the World Economic Forum, Demis Demis Hassabis, who is the founder, who was the founder of Google DeepMind and now who's leading Google's AI efforts, he basically said that, yeah, we are not gonna put ads into Gemini. And it was very funny. Like in that moment, it made sense that, okay, you are Google Gemini and you are also a competitor, and you are basically saying that yes, ChatGPT can go and add ads. We are not gonna do that. That's gonna that's gonna mess up the UI experience. We are not gonna do that. But when you realize on the big picture, you're like, okay, so Google is this massive company where every major product is supported by ads. The entire business runs on ads. They are able to support. They're able to they're able to seed these crazy efforts. Like they had that parachute effort, they had Waymo today is massive company, but Waymo for 10 years was just being incubated inside the company. It wasn't making any money. Even today, we don't know if Waymo is like making any money, so that's the reason it's raising. But they are able to seed all these crazy projects. The entire business is running. They are making billions of dollars because of ads. And then they are like, and then Demis is like, oh, but no, I'm not gonna put ads into Gemini. So it's pretty funny. And I think ChatGPT is so Google is an older company, so they can do something like this where they are like, okay, they have 90% of the business being supported by ads, and then for this 10% product, which is the future of the business, where there's a lot of competition, which is the future of the industry, they can like have a more moral authority or moral stand that, oh yeah, we're not gonna put ads in there because yeah, we don't think that's good for user experience. But they basically, that's how they were built. That's their DNA. That's their DNA. Which also means that they could be using their Gemini conversations. When you're talking to Gemini, it is obviously profiling you. There is no like, yeah, this is, at the end of the day, it's business. Again, I was thinking about the live stream. We're talking to a bunch of sponsors today, and it's really important, like, because I worked in BD, because I worked in product, and I kind of basically get engineering, it's interesting. It's kind of important to kind of build your product for sales first. Build your product for sales first. I know this guy who would, on Reddit, what he would do is he would come up with an idea, and then he would find the perfect subreddit for it, and then he would be like, hey guys, he would create a launch video as if the product is already ready, and he would post that video as if the product is already ready, and then he would be like, hey, join the wait list, and maybe I will ship he will ship the product in like 2 weeks or something. But basically what he's doing is, even before committing to the product, he's testing out the need for it. The product, the entire company, the entire idea is built for sales first. That are you able to get a sale? Then we will think about, hey, how do we figure out the product? So I think that is very important. And even right now I'm thinking about that okay, at first we were doing live streams and this was very focused on, let's say, scratching an itch. But now, how do we move forward? What is the angle that we take? And that should very much depend on what is the need in the market. What is the market need? And that's the reason when we are talking to all these companies, it's kind of important. Like it's very important. Like, yeah, the balance between what the market needs and what I need, and then how do we mix them together so that you are having both fun and it's also a little bit of a challenge. I think that is pretty cool. And also, so where I also wanted to start is the role of conversations. The role of conversations. If you are alone, if you're an artist, let's say, if you're working alone, if you have basically sketched out your entire life to support your work. I was reading on Claude Monet and his affinity to light and his water lilies project. So we talked about Claude Monet, and that was very interesting. He structured his entire life for work. He would wake up early in the morning before the sunrise to capture the light, and he would be working on multiple paintings, multiple easels, right? Easel, as they say. He would be working on multiple easels, and he's constantly bouncing between each one of them based on the light. He loves that. And then in the night, then he is inviting his friends, his family for dinner. And that is really important. That actually plays a massive role. We don't think about it. We don't think about spending time with family as also helping with your work. But I think when you become an artist, everything helps with your work. Everything helps with your work. Just me right now vacuuming my home, that helps me with my work because it just makes me feel that my environment is clean and it just gives me better energy. When you are having conversations where either you feel like you have really helped someone, that makes you feel good. You can be like, okay, let me take that energy. If I'm talking to my little sister, if I'm talking to my little siblings, I am learning something from them, that okay, how they approach the world. There's a different perspective over there. So I think it's really important. Conversations are really important. If you are just alone working on things, yes, if you have a certain idea in your mind, you can go on this grind for maybe 10 days, maybe 15 days. You can go on this grind and you can do something, but after that 10 to 15 day grind, you again want something. And you also kind of, your work, you do the work, then you go out there in the world, you bring an insight and you put that back into your work. And what is that going out in the world? It could be going on a walk, it could be observing something that you haven't observed before, but conversations are the richest one, because at the end of the day, we are humans. We want to be in, we are looking for connection. What is your work? Your work is also connection. Your work is a form of serving people, serving humanity. So you want to be, your work is a form of connection. You are, like when Steve Jobs also says the same thing, he's like, we want to build in the service of humanity. And Jony, I was talking about this, that every time you unbox an iPhone, that feeling is a spiritual experience. When, how beautifully you make that unboxing experience where they open it and they feel that moment of awe. And it's so funny. Like, it's so funny. Like, when these guys say something like this, Jony and Steve Jobs, they talk about how to create the awe factor and stuff like that. Suddenly there are all these engineers sitting in the room and they are trying to over-engineer the thing that they said in a totally mathematical way and be like, oh, how do you generate the awe factor? And awe factor will be generated if there's the surprise, if there's tension, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you kind of like forget that why you are doing this. You forget that awe factor and all of that is not mathematics. It's just like, think about a little boy who is just who just got his first phone and he's really excited to open that. He opens that and he says, wow, like that is it. Like, are you generating that? Yes, you can kind of like break it down into mathematics, but some people just really focus on the over-engineered aspect of it rather than the emotional aspect of it. That, hey, the awe factor is not math. The awe factor is just like when a little kid open your product, little kid or anybody actually open your product, did they say, wow? Did they say, wow, what, this is beautiful, this is beautiful. So yeah, anyways, this is where I want to start. Let's see. Find me some ancient texts that talk about the role of conversations in society. Conversations are really important. I mean, what are we talking about? It is the thing. It is how you connect with someone. How do you connect with someone? You have a conversation with them. And even if you work, you have conversation with someone to bring insights from that work, put into your insights from that conversation, put into your work. And it's just a cycle. It's a cycle that keeps going on. And yeah. It also adds more character. It adds a lot more character to your work when you are talking to more and more interesting people. You're talking to a different variety of people and you're bringing those insights into your work. It adds a lot of character. All right, let's see. Is a fantastic thread to pull and deeply connected to your philosophical instruments work. Curated tour. Greek tradition, Plato's dialogues are the obvious starting point. The Socratic dialogue, emerged as a literary genre in ancient Greece at the turn of the 4th century BC, with the earliest examples preserved in the works of Plato and Xenophon. What's remarkable is that Plato didn't just use a dialogue as a literary device. He treated conversation itself as a mechanism through which truth is discovered. Some people can again over-engineer conversations that we are finding truth. So truth is important. Maybe you just need conversation because having conversation is therapeutic. Like some people, they talk about like women do this thing. Women are really good at that. They collect the bunch of their friends and then they go for brunch. And what they basically do is everybody's complaining. Hey, this guy I met, he's so dumb, he's so tall, blah, blah, blah. I don't like his hair. I don't like his fashion sense, whatever. And what is that? That is therapeutic. And same thing for everybody. Like you are searching for that therapeutic nature in every conversation. It's not about, again, finding truth. Sometimes actually, it's very funny. Like, everybody respects Peter Thiel. Everybody respects Jordan Peterson. And I think the same. But then I saw this one conversation which I thought was so stupid, because it's like Jordan Peterson and Peter Thiel are having a debate, and Jordan Peterson was talking about writings by someone, his interpretation of writing of that person, and they're debating on that. And I thought that was extremely stupid. That was extremely stupid because it's like, I don't think there's any way. Like, I have this book over here. I have this book over here of Nietzsche. Nietzsche lived obviously a long life. He wrote a lot of books. And how can I, first of all, it's very hard to just read one of his books and then remember everything that he said from that book, and to understand what mindset he would have when he was writing this book. It's all interpretation game at this point. So how can you so clearly takes like, first of all, remember someone's context, remember the context in which they wrote the book, interpret it in a certain way, and then debate on top of it with someone who's also smart. And I thought the conversation was very they were like, it's like talking to someone who is taking one very trivial thing seriously, and then you are like, okay, you can take that seriously, you can discover the truth with me over here, but this is stupid. This is like, yeah, what are we doing here? This is a waste of time. But anyways, truth is discovered the Symposium Republic, Phaedrus, and Georgias. On-read conversation is the fundamental technology of civic life. Scholars argue these dialogues provided models for negotiating debate and sustaining conversation in society, distinguishing them from the eristic, captious exchanges of sophists and rhetoricians. Cicero's dialogues, De Oratore and De Republica, transplanted the Greek tradition into Roman political life, framing conversation as essential to republic governance, imagining philosophical discussions happening in gardens and villas among statesmen, philosophical conversations happening in the gardens and villas among statesmen. Indian tradition. From the early hymns of the Rig Veda and the debates of the Upanishadic sage Yajnavalkya to the discourses of the Buddha, Mahavir, and Krishna, dialogue has been the central medium by which ancient Indian authors communicated with their listeners and readers. The Upanishads are structurally built at conversation. That's true. They are conversations between a teacher and student. The term Upanishad itself translates to sitting down near, indicating Upnishad. Okay. Indicating a sacred dialogue between a guru and a disciple. The famous dialogues between Uddalaka in Swetaketu, Chandyoga Upanishad, and Yajnavalkya and King Janaka, Brihadaryanka Upanishad, treat conversation not just as a pedagogical method, but as the very medium through which reality is apprehended. Knowledge in the Vedantic tradition isn't transmitted through lecture, it's sparked through exchange. The Bhagavad Gita is perhaps the most powerful example. Concepts like dharma, karma, moksha were not delivered as sermons but through conversation. Arjun's doubts actually strengthened Krishna's responses. Without Arjuna's voice, Krishna's teachings might have felt distant. That's true. The teacher needs the student as much as the student needs the teacher, because when a teacher sees the doubts of a student, he's able to use this knowledge and concentrate on actually solving a real problem. And that also keeps the teacher in check, because with the questions of the student, the teacher is able to kind of, when he's answering them, he's also able to get not only very quick feedback based on body language and understanding, but also understand that was his explanation simple enough that actually the student actually understood or not. Because if you are teaching something and if you are not able to break that down into its most simplest form to explain someone, then maybe you haven't understood it yet pretty well. The Rig-Vedic dialogue hymns, some of the oldest texts in any Indo-European language, featured structured exchanges between deities, sages, and cosmic forces, suggesting that even cosmology was understood dialogically. Mesopotamian tradition. I'm really interested in this one, Cicero's dialogue. Yeah, we'll look into it. Mesopotamian tradition, dialogue as a genre in the Middle East and Asia dates back to ancient works such as Sumerian disputations preserved in copies from late 3rd millennium BC. Sumerian debate poems, like the debate between sheep and grain or the debate between winter and summer, staged cosmic arguments between personified forces to work out questions of value and social order. Research on ancient Near Eastern literature examines how dialogues function as a key stylistic feature across narratives, disputations, love lyrics, and wisdom literature, introducing conflicts and facilitating the exploration of existential themes. The Babylonian Theodicy is a dialogue between a sufferer and a friend about divine justice, essentially a Mesopotamian book of Job, structured as conversation. Conversations are also important because conversations are not, again, it's not only a way to keep the leader in check, but also it's a way for leader to build trust with people, for people to kind of evaluate that is their leader thinking in the right way or not. So conversations are important. It helps you understand that is your leader actually he actually understands what's happening. Is he a good leader or not? You can kind of evaluate his proficiency. I don't know, proficiency is the word. You can evaluate his skills by understanding that, okay, by his responses, do you think that he's actually aware? And maybe he definitely doesn't know everything in this world, but does he know how to conduct himself when he only knows, let's say he has only 50% of the knowledge in this particular domain, in a particular domain. Late antique and early Christian tradition. Christian authors explored and transformed the dialogue form in composing new culturally contingent forms of dialogue, designed as tools of opinion formation amid the religious controversies of the time, opposing Christian and Jew, Christian and pagan, Christian and Manichaean, Orthodox and heretic. These weren't just literary exercises. The extraordinary flourishing of the dialogue form attests to a lively society that thrived on religious debate. Ancient Jew Review. Christians and Conversations, a guide to late antique dialogues in Greek and Syriac. This is people having conversations. Disputatio Iasonis e Papici, a guide to late antique dialogues in Greek and Syriac. Everybody seems to be talking. Aristotle beginning physics. Cyril of Alexandria. Mark the Monk. The Analects of Confucius are structured as conversational exchanges between Confucius and his students, treating dialogue as the foundation of ethical cultivation and social harmony. It's very interesting. It's like a forcing function. In those times when they didn't have proper writing mechanisms, they didn't have book and pen, they didn't have proper printing mechanisms, they had to really make sure that they are creating these poems, they're creating these music kind of that contains all the content, the right content, which is transmitted to their students in a way that puts them in the right state to absorb, to receive that knowledge, remember that knowledge, and then further transmit that to their students. So it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool, like how they thought about it. It's a forcing function. When you don't have mechanisms like, the more convenience we build, the harder. What's the opposite of harder? Softer? No. The more lesser, I think we should just say less. The more convenience we have, the less we build these Bulletproof mechanisms. The more convenience we have, the less we build bulletproof mechanisms. Like in the past, we didn't have Uber Eats, we didn't have proper food production. So you build redundancy, you build these bulletproof mechanisms where you are like, okay, if I find food, I will make sure to store it in a certain way, store a lot of it, the right amount, store in a certain way, store in the right place, to make sure, yeah. And that basically led to like pretty good mechanisms for food storage, because now you could store food for longer. You knew how to use the right chemicals and right stuff. You knew where to store it so that nobody can steal it. No, like it's like cool and doesn't go bad. So I think that's also very interesting. The more convenience we build, the less we think about building bulletproof mechanisms. And then who goes and builds them out? We don't know. Very interesting. All right, let's see. Tell me more. Searching the web. Let's go. Cicero and Roman civic education. Cicero is such a fascinating figure for this, because he wasn't just writing about conversation theoretically. He was a statesman watching the Roman Republic collapse around him, and his dialogues were essentially an argument that the Republic's survival depended on a particular quality of conversation. De Oratore. Is he saying that conversation is a solution? Conversation is the solution. I think today we are having a lot of podcasts, and podcasts are actually good, because what podcasts are doing is podcasts are bringing people together. The longer the podcast you have, when you do a 3 hour long podcast, you quickly realize that this person and me, we are pretty much the same. The only difference is that they were exposed to different experiences. They had different parents. They were born in a different world, and maybe they have like different trauma, different childhood, different income, different household income. But then at the end of the day, it's the same. We are human. So the one person could be from Russia, the other person could be from Africa, but they both hop on a call, and they both hop on a podcast, and they talk through a lot of things. Or maybe one person listens and the other person is talking, and they quickly realize that, wait, we are same. And then that quickly breaks the barriers, and people stop thinking about that, oh, Russia means different people, Africa means different people, America means different people. It's the same people. People is people. Cicero wrote about a dialogue among a group of excellent political men and orators who came together to discuss the crisis and general decline of politics. They met in the garden of Lucius Licinius Crassus Villa in Tusculum. The setting matters. It's a retreat from the political arena where statesmen can think together without the pressures of the Senate floor. The core argument is radical for its time. Eloquence is positioned as the primary instrument for governance and moral leadership, underscoring Cicero's broader conviction that oratory integrates intellect with persuasive force, rendering it indispensable for republican institutions where consensus rather than coercion sustains authority. Whoa! It is linking. This is the first time that I've seen Claude is linking Grokipedia. Claude is linking Grokipedia. This is pretty cool. The core argument is radical for its time. Eloquence is positioned as the primary instrument for governance. Eloquence. This is true. Some of our leaders who we consider as the best leaders, they are eloquent. They talk pretty well. Eloquence is positioned as the primary instrument for governance and moral leadership, underscoring Cicero's broader conviction that oratory integrates intellect with persuasive force, rendering it indispensable for republican institutions where consensus rather than coercion sustains authority. That's the key line: consensus, not coercion. Cicero saw conversation as the technology. It's beautiful, like how you can just say everything is the technology. Technology just means, I forgot what we looked into this. Let's see. What is the origin of the word technology? Oh, wrong. Philosophical ancestry, Greek DNA, techne, craft, logos, reason. Techne, logos, literally, the systematic understanding of craft, the reasoning about how things are made, not gadgets, not silicon, but not apps, but the knowledge of how to shape the world. Machines until much later. Building a ship, composing a tragedy, or designing a political system all belong to techne. Techne is craft, understanding of craft. A sculptor had techne. A shipbuilder had techne. Even a statesman or poet could possess techne. It meant knowing how to bring something into existence. Never just about tools, it was about human skill. Technology was about human skill, collective reasoning, making reality negotiable. In other words, technology began not in factories, but in the space where craft meets conversation. Wow, that's pretty cool. Connects beautifully to what you were just exploring on conversation, because logos is dialogue, reason, shared thinking, the systematic understanding of craft. Wow, systematic understanding of craft. Technology. 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 Techne means craft. Logos means reasoning, understanding. Originally, it meant the thinking behind making, not the making itself. A discourse on the mechanical arts. Wow. Very interesting, very interesting. Deliberately said his extended conversation in the generation of his childhood teachers, and a study of the dialogue in his historical setting shows how the political and cultural life of this earlier period differed from Cicero's personal experience of the collapse of senatorial government. He was writing this in the mid-50s BCE, when the first triumvirate, Caesar, Pompey, Crassus, had effectively neutered the Senate. So he said the dialogue in 90s BCE, a generation earlier, when republican institutions still functioned, as a kind of elegy for what conversation-based governance looked like when it worked. Saw the statesmen of the 90s not only as effective leaders, but as morally upright and in de Oratore. He advocates for an education in two parts: learning by imitating great statesmen, and by acquiring universal knowledge. Villanova. Oh, what was that? It was a PDF. It's pretty cool. Like Claude can find PDFs. The civic education of Cicero's ideal orator. While the ipsa perturbatio disciplinae veteris refers to the political crisis that plagued Rome. De Oratore. The apparently broad political support for his actions proved short-lived. The events surrounding the Monet trial. It's always cool to read the last sentence. Let's see. Or last paragraph. By contrast, a renewed Roman Republic requires orators with the wisdom and character of earlier generations. The ideal orator ought to be skilled in speech and expert in the same areas as those distinguished Romans of the past, under whose leadership the Republic flourished at home and abroad in the 3rd and 2nd centuries. Crassus, Antonius, Cato the Elder, Scipio Aemilianus, indicates that he does not wish to rid Roman education of Greek influence, but to see it properly oriented in relation to Roman practice. The orator must observe Roman practice as set forth in law and custom, not only to persuade others, but also to preserve the social fabric of the Republic. As Crassus contends, the leadership and wisdom, moderatio e sapientia of the perfect orator provide the chief basis not only for his own dignity, but also for the safety of countless individuals in the Republic as a whole. Wow. Vulgus. Whoa. Vulgus. So vulgus means crowd. Vulgar. Basically the origin of the word vulgar is something that is made for the masses. Wow. Okay. Let me check. I'm guessing. What is the origin of the word vulgar? This might be right. Let's see. Has a glow down story. Today it smells like bad manners and loud chewing. Originally it just meant everyone. Wow. Everyone. I think so. My guess is this. So the elites, it's just like classical music. Elites always want to have something that is for them. The moment an art form like opera is built for the elites because it's supposed to be in a theater. It's supposed to be watched in a very prestigious way. Red carpet event. You are dressed in a certain way, and then you are watching that. It's kind of a aristocratic leisure time. And when a new art form arises, which is for everyone, which is more like, let's say, the hip-hop music. Hip-hop music would be someone that the elites would say as vulgar. Why? Because it is getting popular and popular among the masses, but it doesn't match the taste of the elites. So it's very interesting. I think that's where they started calling it vulgar. The root, it comes from the Latin vulgus, the common people, the crowd, the masses. From this frame, vulgaris, of the ordinary people belonging to the public. So something vulgar was simply common, widespread, popular, not crude, not tasteless, just not elite. Vulgar languages meant the everyday spoken tongues of the people. Example, I think French, again. Whoa, French is vulgar. Huh. So I think there should be Latin, language of church and scholarship. French, Italian, Spanish, vulgar languages. So yeah, there is a certain language which is more aristocratic, which has a lot of flavor and finesse to it. And that is, I think they said this. Okay. I think, right. So there are some languages that just naturally have a lot of finesse to it, and they have a lot of flavor to it. They're obviously for the philosophers and the poets and the elites and the constitution and the government. And then there are languages that are spoken by the tribes and stuff, and that's vulgar languages. Dante's De Vulgari Eloquentia literally argues that the vulgar tongue, Italian, is worthy of poetry. So vulgar once meant democratic. The shift over time, elites began associating common to unsophisticated to coarse. Exactly. So the word slid down the social order: common, low, crude, offensive. By the 17th century, vulgar started meaning lacking refinement, tasteless, indecent. The insult vulgar is secretly aristocratic. It encodes an old judgment: what belongs to everyone must be lesser. So when someone says something is vulgar today, they are echoing a very ancient tension: mass versus refined, public versus elite, popular versus culture. Pretty cool. Okay, let's go back to Cicero. I think this is one of the best use cases that I've seen for Claude Code, which is basically, or Claude Cowork, which is just, can you organize all my files? Can you organize all the files on my computer? It does a really good job. It does a really good job at understanding what every file is, what are the contents of every file, and then putting them into the right folders. It does a really good job. So I think maybe every 1 month, this is the best way to clean it. Just go to Cowork and be like, hey, organize my files. It's pretty cool. All right. The ideal orator statesman isn't just rhetorically skilled, he's a philosopher, legal scholar, historian, and ethicist all at once, because real political conversation demands all of those capacities simultaneously. The ideal orator statesman isn't just rhetorically skilled, he's a philosopher, legal scholar, historian, and ethicist all at once, because real political conversation demands all of those capacities simultaneously. De Republica, written immediately after De Oratore. This is Cicero's Roman answer to Plato's Republic, together with On the Orator, De Republica, and De Legibus, introduce the dialogue form into Latin literature, and notwithstanding the influence of Plato, can lay claim to being among the most original parts of Cicero's philosophy, since each deals to a substantial extent with the government and institutions of a state of which Plato could have had no inkling, namely Rome. The dialogue during 3 consecutive days in the garden of Scipio Africanus the Younger, again the villa garden setting where statesmen engage in philosophical conversation away from the forum. Various aspects of the state with his contemporaries, arguing that the most effective government is a mixed constitution incorporating elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. Wow. They're pretty much talking about the same things that we talked about. This is very interesting to see, like how something like Rome falls. Something like Rome can fall if people slowly lose their discipline. Something like Rome can fall. What's philosophically interesting is how Cicero uses the resources of the dialogue form to draw readers into critical participation in his inquiry. This reminds me, Ray Dalio has been posting a lot recently, and Ray Dalio has a new thing which we could look into. What is Ray Dalio's most recent blog? I think he only writes one blog per 6 months or something. Okay. Mixed constitution incorporating elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. Wow. And the source is Cicero's De Republica. On the Commonwealth, written around 51 BCE, foundational text and exploration of political theory, particularly concerning the nature of government and justice, composed in dialogue form. Scipio, state with his contemporaries, highlighting the complexities of governance. Most effective government is a mixed constitution. Summary of event. Okay. Significance. The theory of mixed constitution and the relation of justice to the state. Cicero was not the originator of either idea, but he's primarily responsible for transmitting them to later ages. The third aspect is controversial. It may have influenced Augustus. Princeps on the Ciceronian princeps or rector, who guides by auctoritas instead of ruling through protestas or imperium. Who guides by prestige instead of power. Who guides by prestige instead of power. The virtue of the mixed constitution is that it is immune to the defects inherent in the 3 types of government. In ancient political theory, there was an inevitable cycle in which monarchy degenerated into tyranny, aristocracy into oligarchy, and democracy into anarchic mob rule. Yet, if the 3 types are combined into a single system of government, their differences interact with one another and form a series of checks and balances to prevent the dominance and subsequent degeneration of any one type. Monarchy degenerated into tyranny, makes sense. Aristocracy into oligarchy, democracy into anarchic mob rule. So the right government is a mix of all three of them so that you get the pros and cons of all of them. But how do you do that? So monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. The influence of this theory is readily apparent in the structure of the US Constitution. So you have a kind of a monarchy, you have a kind of aristocracy, and you do have democracy. Okay, very cool. Treatment of the role of justice within the state is equally relevant. The initial argument is that justice is inimical to the efficient operation of the state because it is opposed to self-interest. Because each state has diverse laws and customs, there is no universal concept of justice that all states can follow. Among states, as among men, the accepted principle is that the stronger dominate and they exploit the weaker to ensure their own security and self-interest. If a state attempts to observe justice, it will only expose itself to mediocrity and external control. Very interesting, very interesting. Appeal to political thinkers more as an allegory than as a practical treatise for real politicians. Roman practicality tempered by moderate idealism urging on men a role of action as statesmen. To the philosophers, Cicero remained the ideal of the active man, a thinker in action, in spite of the faulty policy that led to his death in the proscription. Faulty policy? What happened? A thinker in action. A thinker in action is a pretty cool way to describe someone. Because you are not someone who is just talking. It's about a type of human. Let's unpack it. Not a monk of philosophy. He did not retreat into a garden like Epicurus or sculpt abstract systems like Plato. He lived in the mud and noise of politics. He wrote philosophy while governing provinces. He debated justice while navigating civil war. He theorized the ideal state while watching the real one collapse. The Romans admired his synthesis deeply. For them, wisdom that stayed in books was unfinished wisdom that had to walk into the Senate chamber became the prototype of the statesman who philosophizes. I don't think it's a good word. Okay, philosophizes, and the philosopher who acts. And then comes a twist. His end was not noble in the clean mythic sense. He made a strategic miscalculation. After Caesar's assassination, Cicero believed he could restore the Republic by attacking Mark Antony. Through a series of speeches called the Philippics, he gambled on the wrong power alignment. Instead of stabilizing Rome, he helped trigger the chaos that allowed the second triumvirate to rise. Antony placed him on the proscription list. Execution followed. Hands cut off, head displayed, a brutal punctuation mark. And yet, philosophers still kept him as an ideal. Why? Because his failure was political, not existential. He did not fail by withdrawing. He did not fail by refusing responsibility. He failed while trying to act. Engagement carries risk. Purity of thought without action carries irrelevance. Engagement carries risk. Purity of thought without action carries irrelevance. He chose risk for someone like you. It's not detached clarity, it is thinking that is willing to get its hands dirty in reality. The deeper philosophical contrast, Greek ideal, the contemplative stage, Roman ideal, the responsible actor. What is the proscription list? A state-sanctioned hitless, no metaphor needed. It was chillingly literal. Rome spiraled into another power struggle. 3 men formed an alliance to take control. Octavian, Augustus, Mark Antony, Lepidus. They created what's called the Second Triumvirate to consolidate power that it's something terrifyingly efficient. They published a list of people declared enemies of the state, stripped of legal protection. Interesting. So he was just trying to have a debate with him, but the timing was wrong, and they ended up creating this proscription list in which they put his name too. Enemies of the state, stripped of legal protection, marked for execution. Your property was confiscated, your family lost status and wealth. State rewarded the killers. It was politically cleansing, disguised as legality. His fierce speeches attacking Mark Antony. Antony insisted on his inclusion. Once the list was posted in the forum, Cicero was no longer a citizen, he was prey. He tried to flee but was captured, executed. Wow. Okay. Very interesting. So he was just trying to have a debate. He was just trying to have a speech with him. But this guy, he just used the bigger power or bigger thing. He was just like, yeah, bigger thing, whatever. He's like, no. We're playing a different game. We're not fighting with words. The dialogue form isn't decorative, it is the argument. The mixed constitution works because it institutionalizes multiple voices, and the dialogue form mirrors that. Set up tensions and oppositions that reflect on the one hand his academic skepticism, but on the other manifests his commitment to the republic, a political system which itself, in its Ciceronian interpretation, stems from antagonism, competition, and rivalry. The deeper pattern, what makes Cicero so interesting compared to Plato, is a shift in what conversation does. For Plato, dialogue leads toward truth. For Plato, dialogue leads toward truth. It's epistemological. For Cicero, dialogue sustains the state. It's political. For Plato, dialogue leads to truth. For Cicero, dialogue sustains the state. It's political. The republic literally is a conversation. When the conversation breaks down, as it was doing in Cicero's lifetime, with political violence replacing debate, the republic dies. It was doing in Cicero's lifetime with political violence replacing debate. Dialogue sustains the state. That is very interesting. Dialogue sustains the state. And Cicero proved this with his own life. Cicero's re-entry into political life at 44 with his attack on Mark Antony led to his proscription and death in December 43. Oh, December 9, whatever. 43, the year. Okay. I'm like, whoa, that's not a date. He was killed for speaking. The last great actor of the Republic murdered precisely because conversation had been replaced by force. There's something there that connects to your philosophical instruments. The society that values dialogue gets a republic. A society that replaces dialogue with monologue gets an empire. Your instruments are essentially testing which mode people default to. Is it a conversation among many people, or is it a conversation of just one person? Quotes by Cicero, let's see. The good of the people is the greatest law. On conversation, speech, and public life, the good of the people is the greatest law. The good of the people is the greatest law. We are not born for ourselves alone. The good of the people is the greatest law. We are not born for ourselves alone. The safety of the people shall be the highest law. I think this is interesting. I think this is what they are talking about with AI. When there is so much abundance that people don't have to fight for resources. And they are then taking decisions based on what is convenient, what actually makes sense, rather than out of spite. But you will always have spite. You will always have spite. We are not born for ourselves alone. The safety, actually, we shouldn't say that. Yeah, there'll be moments where people forget about spite, when everybody will come together. We are not born for ourselves alone. The safety of the people shall be the highest law. The safety of the people shall be the highest law. A room without books is like a body without a soul. Nice, we got some books here. If you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. If you have a garden and a library, okay, so basically we need a garden. You have everything you need. The authority of those who teach is often an obstacle to those who want to learn. The authority of those who teach is often an obstacle to those who want to learn. On philosophy and wisdom, I think it's talking about, is it just talking about the fear and the kind of facade that a teacher might create as an authority that makes it difficult to learn something? On philosophy and wisdom, the unexamined life is not worth living, is Socrates why a Plato with Cicero's version is. To study philosophy is nothing but to prepare one's self to die. Tusculane disputation. Tusculane disputation. To study philosophy is nothing but to prepare oneself to die. Not to know what happened before you were born is to remain forever a child. Not to know what happened before you were born is to remain forever a child. That is true. Otherwise, you pick up wars of someone else. Not to know what happened before you were born is to remain forever a child. The function of wisdom is to discriminate between good and evil. The function of wisdom is to discriminate between good and evil. A man of courage is also full of faith. A man of courage is also full of faith. A man of courage is also full of faith. The function of wisdom is to discriminate between good and evil. On friendship and human connection, friendship improves happiness and abates misery by the doubling of our joy and the dividing of our grief. De amicitia, amicitia, amicitia. Life is nothing without friendship. Life is nothing without friendship. Let's go. Let's go. On morality and character, any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error. Any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error. Philippicae. Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. Proplancio. We might learn Italian if Italian is going to teach us so many interesting things about governance. Nothing is so strongly fortified that it cannot be taken by money. Nothing is so strongly fortified that it cannot be taken by money. Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. In times of war, the law falls silent. Pro Meloni. One of the most quoted lines in legal philosophy. In times of war, the law falls silent. on the republic and governance. The republic is the property of the people. Res publica, res populi. Laws are silent in the midst of arms. The sinews of war are infinite money. The sinews of war are infinite money. Dig deeper into any particular theme. Tell me more about how Cicero would advise someone to be a good orator. Let's see. Rhetorical principles and oratorical guidance. Far more expansive than most people expect. It's not a speech techniques manual. It's essentially a blueprint for what a complete human being looks like. Here's how he advises you. The 3 foundations. The 3 requisites for becoming an effective speaker are nature, art, and practice. Nature, art, and practice. The good speaker must possess certain natural qualities like a pleasant voice and the ability to project it. A solid knowledge of the systematic body of rhetorical principles is likewise essential. Finally, one's natural gifts and knowledge of the rules must be polished and enhanced by diligent and purposeful practice. First of all, natural, then art. Art is knowledge. Solid knowledge of the systematic body of rhetorical principles is likewise essential. And finally, practice. One's natural gifts and knowledge of the rules must be polished and enhanced by diligent and purposeful practice. So right away, nature, art, practice. Pleasant voice, ability to project it. So right away, Cicero isn't saying oratory is pure talent or pure technique. It's a dialectic between, I need to know the meaning of dialectic. What is the meaning? For a very human dance of thinking together. It means understanding something by exploring, exposing, understanding something by exploring, opposing ideas through conversations. Declaring truth like king issuing orders, dialectic. Treats truth like something that emerges when different viewpoints meet, clash, question, refine, and evolve. Think of it as not a lecture, but a living back and forth. Simple breakdown, dialectic. A claim, a challenge to that claim. A deeper insight born from the tension. Tension between ideas. What are you born with? What do you study? And what do you do repeatedly? The 3 aims. Docere, delectere, movere. The 3 aims of the orator are docere. I think docere means sweet. Delectere and movere. To prove your thesis to the audience. No. To prove your thesis to the audience. To delight the audience. And to emotionally move the audience. To prove your thesis to the audience. Prove your thesis. Delight and emotionally move. What's the difference between delight and emotionally move? Prove your thesis is more logical. Delight is make them smile, make them smile, make them laugh, and emotionally move, like emotionally touch them so that idea really ingrains into their soul that, yeah, what you said, this TED talk that I watched, I'm totally moved. I'm going to go back home and start cooking. I'm going to stop ordering Uber Eats. Actually, I'm curious. If Cicero trained, actually, no. How would Cicero convince the modern public living in this modern life to stop ordering Uber Eats and start cooking food? Create a speech. This is beautiful. Alright, where are we at? Deceptively simple. Most people fixate on the first. Make your argument. Maybe the third. stir emotion, insist on delight. The audience must actually enjoy being in the conversation. Enjoy. An orator who instructs without delighting is a lecturer. An orator who moves without instructing is a demagogue. Whoa. What's a demagogue? What's the meaning? Great word to pause on. Someone who persuades people by appealing to emotions, fears, or prejudices rather than reason. Oh, that's like politician. An orator tries to clarify reality. A demagogue tries to shape feelings. Skilled with language, but instead of guiding people toward truth or wise action, they simplify complex problems into villains and heroes. Stoke anger, resentment, or tribal identity, promise easy fixes, prioritize winning over understanding. Cicero identifies 5 procedures that make up oratory: invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. Invention, arrangement, style, memory, delivery. In his own definitions, invention is the discovery of valid or seemingly valid arguments to render one's cause plausible. Arrangement is the distribution of arguments in the proper order. Arrangement is the distribution of arguments in the proper order. Expression is the fitting of the proper language to the invented matter. Memory is the firm mental grasp of matter and words. Delivery is the control of voice and body in a manner suitable to the dignity of the subject matter. These 5 canons became the backbone of Western rhetorical education for nearly 2,000 years. But what's distinctive about Cicero is that he treated them as interdependent. You can't have good delivery without having generally internalized the content through memory, and you can arrange well what you haven't truly invented. What is the origin of the word invent? Invent means you vent your feelings inwards. To come upon, to find, to discover. Into, to come. Did not mean creating something from nothing. It meant to arrive at something that was already there. Yes. To arrive at something that was already there. In classical rhetoric, Cicero would smile here. Inventio was the first step of persuasion. It meant discovering the right arguments, uncovering what already exists in potential, not manufacturing truth, finding it. Magician pulling rabbits from the void, more like an explorer stumbling upon a hidden valley. Creation as discovery. You're often sensing something latent in the culture and giving it form. You don't summon it, you meet it. Rhetorical education for nearly 2,000 years, but what's distinctive about Cicero is that he treated them as interdependent. You can't have good delivery without having generally internalized the content through memory, and you can't arrange well what you haven't truly invented. Writing is a secret weapon. Write constantly. He argues that writing is the best and most excellent modeler and teacher of oratory, because if what is meditated and considered easily surpasses sudden and extemporary speech, then a constant diligent habit of writing will be of more effect than meditation and consideration itself. The pen trains the tongue. Believe that the discipline of writing, choosing every word, refining every sentence, builds a reservoir of linguistic precision that then flows naturally into spoken performance. Be a complete human being, not just a technician. This is where Cicero diverges radically from Greek rhetoricians. Orators must have knowledge in all important subjects and arts. Without this, speech would be empty. Without beauty and fullness. Specificity diverges radically from Greek rhetoricians. Orators must have knowledge in all important subjects and arts. Without this, speech would be empty. Without beauty and fullness. He goes further, no one is to be numbered among orators who is not thoroughly accomplished in all branches of knowledge requisite for a man of good breeding. Man of good breeding is not one who not only knows the rules of poetry and rhetoric but has a deep grasp on literature, history, law, and philosophy. What we know today as the liberal arts. He uses a beautiful analogy from De Oratore, just as those who play ball games do not exhibit the gestures of the palestra, but their movements indicate whether they have learned those exercises or not. So in orations, although other sciences have no peculiar place in them, it is easily evident whether the speaker possesses that deeper knowledge. The audience can feel whether you are drawing from a deep well or a shallow one, even if they can't articulate why. Although other sciences have no peculiar place in them, it is easily evident whether the speaker possesses the deeper knowledge. Attalus. The audience can feel whether you're drawing from a deep well or a shallow one. Know your audience's psychology. The principal business of an orator is that he might appear to those to whom he spoke to be such as he would wish to appear, and that the minds of the audience should be affected in such a manner as the orator would have them to be affected. An object which could by no means be attained unless the speaker understood by what methods, by what arguments, by what sort of language the minds of men are moved. This essentially applied psychology 2 millennia before the field existed. Cicero was saying, before you worry about what you are saying, understand who you are saying it to and how their minds work. Character over technique. The ability to fascinate audiences, persuade them to good decisions and virtue, and to draw them away from bad passions involved a great deal of philosophical knowledge as well as technical skill in speaking. The early Roman ideal was the orator as vir bonus descendi pertis, a good man skilled in speaking. The good man part comes first. He wrote about how the power of words in a man without scruples was a danger to society, which was his barely veiled commentary on figures like Caesar and Catiline. Power of words in a man without scruples was a danger to society. What is scruples? What's the meaning? What makes Cicero's advice so distinctive is that he doesn't separate the orator from the citizen. Eloquence is Eloquence is indispensable for republican institutions where consensus rather than coercion sustains authority. Learning to speak well isn't a career skill, it's a civic obligation. The republic depends on people who can think clearly, communicate persuasively, and do so with moral integrity. There's something deeply relevant here for your content work. People think through the experience of engaging with a mind that has done the deep work across multiple disciplines. It's what makes conversation real. Moral hesitations. Interesting. Wow. That's the stream. This was fun. Merci.